Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to lesson 20 of module 4. Today we're going to be continuing with the same standards we've been focused on, all about graphing proportional relationships and various equations. We've been working with slope-intercept form and standard form. We're going to continue with that. And today, by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to write the equation for a line in standard form and slope-intercept form by observing its graph. You'll know you're successful when you can write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form by identifying the m and b values, and then you can turn that equation to follow standard form, just by applying properties of equality. We're going to do some review, examples, exercises. We'll do our closure and our exit ticket, and then you'll move on to your lesson reflection. Please remember class expectations, and as we go through this, keep in mind why we're learning this. Why is it important for your life right now? Why is it important for your life in the future? Okay? All right. For this slide, this is our building background knowledge slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this line and I'm going to write the equation that represents it. So I know I'm following this format. Y equals mx plus b. So this is the format I'm following. It's a lot thicker than I wanted it to be. And I need to find, in order to write this, I need to find what my m is, which is my slope, and I need to find out what is my b, what is my y-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to go to the graph and look for those two things, and then I'm going to write my equation. So I'm looking for my y-intercept first. And this is where my line intersects my y-axis. So where does it cross on this line? Well, it crosses right here. And if I count where that position is, this is at positive 1, positive 2. So my y-intercept is a 2. My b is a 2. From there, I'm looking for my slope. So I'm thinking, okay, to go from this point to the next point on the more right side of my graph, how many am I going up? How many am I going over? Well, I see a point right here. So I'm going to count how many spaces am I going up. What's my rise? Rising 1, 2, 3. So I rose 3. And I'm going over 1. So my run is 1. So my rise over run is 3 over 1, which reduces to 3. And I have my m, I have my b. I'm just going to fill everything else in here. Okay, the equation for this line in slope-intercept form is y equals 3x plus 2. The second part of our equation and the second part of our lesson today is we're going to be using properties of equality, which is just like add 2 to this side, add 2 to that side. Divide 3 from the left, divide 3 from the right, to change this equation from slope-intercept form and have it follow standard form instead. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We've done the opposite before. We worked backwards and turned standard form into slope-intercept form. So it's just going to be the same thing. We want to get our x's plus a number with our y's equals c. So I have y equals 3x plus 2. So first I want to identify my parts here. Okay. So where are my x's? Well, my x's are right here. Okay. Where are my y's? My y's, I just have one y. It's right there, so it's 1y. I can go ahead and put a 1 there. And then where's that number that doesn't have any variable attached to it, which we call c? That is right here. So right now I need to rearrange this, okay? I need it to be my x's first plus my y's equals this c number. So what am I going to do to get that to happen? Well, I'm going to use properties of equality. So the first thing I want to do, I want to move my x's over to this side, okay, because that's where they are in my equation, ax, that comes first. So right now I have positive 3x's or plus 3x's, so I'm just going to take away 3x's from this side and move them over here. If we do it to one side, we have to do it to the other, okay? On the left side, I now have negative 3x's and 1y. All right, over here this canceled, and I have a 2. And you can see that I'm following my format. Ax plus by equals C. Okay? Now, the only thing that's left about this question that it asks me to do, it says that it wants A to not be a negative number. So I don't know if you guys can see that right there, but it wants this A, which would be this right here, -3, to not be negative. So how could I turn this into a positive? Well, I would have to turn everything in my equation to the opposite. So if I did that, I would turn this to positive 3x. I would turn this to negative 1y. And I would turn this to negative 2. And that is now following my format. So my final equation in standard form is positive 3x plus negative 1y equals negative 2. And that's what we're going to be doing today. All right, for example 1, we're going to do the exact same thing. This time I want you to write what I write. So we are looking to find the equation y equals mx plus b. We need to identify our m, and we need to identify our b. All right, for our b, for our y-intercept, where does it cross this y-axis? Well, this line crosses right here at this point, at -1. So this b is a -1. And then what's my slope? Well, to move to the right side of the graph, I can see that I'm going to be going down. And I can see the next point is like right here. So I'm going to be going down 1, down 2 to get to this line. So I went down 2. And I'm going to be going over 1, 2, 3. So over 3. So the slope for this is -2 over 3. That's my rise over my run. I fill everything else in for this equation. Make sure I keep my x because that's something we forgot about yesterday. And I have y equals -2/3 x plus -1. Okay? So I'm just going to copy this down right over here because from here I'm going to be turning this into standard form. So I want to go ahead and try to get my ax on the left. So this is ax in terms of standard form, so I want to move it over because I want it to be at the front. And then I want to say plus by, well, what's the b? What's in front of that y that's invisible? A 1. So by equals c. And so this right here is going to be my c, my -1, just a number with no variable. Okay? First thing I'm going to do is move my -2/3 x to the other side. Well, what's the opposite of -2/3 x? Positive 2/3 x. So I'm just going to be adding 2/3 x. Okay? To both sides. Now, I do have my ax. At the front, I have 2/3 x. Plus, I have the 1y here, equals, well, what's left on this side? Just my -1. And I now am following the format ax plus by equals c. So this is my answer. And all of these, my a was already negative, so I don't have to do any changing there. Again, for example 2, we are doing the exact same thing. First, we're going to write it in slope-intercept form, identify our slope, identify our intercept, and then secondly, we're going to turn it into standard form. So first, I'm going to be looking for my y-intercept. Where does it cross this y-axis? Well, it crosses right here, and if you look at that number, this is -4. If we start our origin, we're at -1, -2, -3, -4. So my b is a -4. From there, I'm looking for my slope. Well, if I'm moving to the right side, I'm going to be going down, right? Not rising, I'll be going down, so I'll be having a negative slope. So I'm going to go down 1 to match that line that this new point is on. And I'm going to be going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the slope for this line is -1, down 1, that was my rise, over 5. And I keep everything else the same. This becomes y equals -1/5 x plus -4. And I'm going to write that right here. All right, from there I'm trying to get my something times x at the front, followed by something times y, followed by just a number on the right side, which we call our c. So I need to reorder this. My red part right here needs to be on on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to be doing the opposite of this. The opposite of negative 1/5 x is positive 1/5 x, or plus 1/5 x. It's the same thing. And I do it to both sides. Now I have 1/5 x plus, well, how many y's is this? This is 1y. 1y equals, well, over here it canceled, and I'm just left with -4. So now I'm looking, do I follow my format? ax plus by equals c, and that is my answer. All right, this is my last example before you move into trying this on your own, so please make sure you're paying attention and you're asking me questions before we leave this slide, if you have any. So I've written down my format for slope-intercept form, and I'm going to go identify these points. I'm going to identify my y-intercept, which is my b, and it crosses right at 0. So my y-intercept is a 0. From there, I'm going to identify my next point and then use that to find my slope. So I'm moving to the right. So I need a point on the right of this. I can see one literally right there. And to get to that point, what's my rise? Well, I'm rising 1. And what's my run? 1. So I have 1 over 1. And that reduces to just 1. 1 over 1 is the same as 1. I fill everything else in about my equation. Y equals 1x plus 0. And from there, I'm going to be trying to follow my standard form. I want to get my x's at the front. Right now, it's not where it needs to be. I need to get my y's, my by's to come right after that, and then I need it to say equals c. So I have to move everything around here. But really, it just takes one move to get this format to work, and it's to move this 1x to the other side, because then I'll have my red plus my blue equals my yellow. Okay? The opposite of 1x is negative 1x or minus 1x. Now I have my x at the front because that's how it says in my equation. I want my ax's first, plus, well, how many y's do I have? Well, I just have one y. Remember, there's an invisible coefficient of 1 there. Equals, on this side this canceled, and I'm just left with a 0. Now the last thing I need to do here is take away this negative, because it says a should not be negative. And so I'm going to make sure that a is not negative. Right now this is my a, ax. So I want to turn that into a positive. Now if I turn that into a positive 1x, then everything else has to change to the opposite as well. So positive 1x, well, this becomes negative 1y. And there's no such thing as the opposite of 0. It just remains 0. So my equation in standard form is 1x plus negative 1y equals 0. Okay, so our new learning for today is that to write an equation in slope-intercept form, we need the slope and the y-intercept. This is what we've been practicing for the last couple days, is identifying those things and writing it in slope-intercept form. We find our slope by counting our rise over run, and we find our y-intercept by observing where does our line cross the y-axis. Okay, so that's things we've already known, but today what we're practicing that's a little bit new is that once we have our equation written in slope-intercept form, we can rearrange it to follow standard form. Okay, so we want our a's to always be first, our ax's, so whatever x is attached to is the same as mx. Then we want it to be plus or added to our by's, so we want our y's, and then we want our c, our regular number at the end. So these are called different things in our different equations, but just remember you want your x's plus your y's equals a number. And so that's how we will do this today. All right, beginning with your first exercise, you are going to be working on this with your breakout group. You have a graph off to the right, and what you're going to be doing is writing that equation for the graph in slope-intercept form right here by identifying your m and your b. From there, once you have that equation written, you are going to be taking it, turning it from slope-intercept form into standard form down here. keep in mind, I want you to make sure that a is not a negative. So if it ends up being a negative, remember to change the sign of everything. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to work on this. All right, and I'm just going to go over this. So first was looking for the y-intercept of this line. Where does it cross my y-axis? I can see it crosses right here at positive 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my b is a 5. And then I'm looking for a next point on the right. I see one right here. To get to that point, my rise is 1, and my run is 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going up 1 over 4. So it's 1 over 4. And I just make sure to fill in the rest of my equation. So please check that with your work. Did you get y equals 1/4 x plus 5? From there, our new learning down here, we are going to be transforming this equation to follow standard form. So first I want to get my x's to be at the beginning of my equation. So I'm going to move them over. To do that, all I have to do is subtract 1/4 x, because the opposite of plus 1/4 x is minus 1/4 x. And that's part of my properties of equality. On the left side, I have negative 1/4 x, and I have 1y. I'm going to write 1 in front of it. Over here it cancels, and I'm just left with a 5. And now I'm following my format. ax plus by equals c. You could see that. ax plus by equals c. The only thing I have to do before I move forward is make sure a is not a negative. And right now, it is. It's negative 1/4. So I'm just going to change that to positive 1/4 x. But if I change the opposite of that, I have to change the opposite of everything. So this becomes negative 1y. This becomes negative 5. And that is our answer here. Check your work with my work. Let me know in the chat if you got it correct. Okay? And if you got it wrong, let me know what mistake you made. All right, exercise 2, same thing. Please write your equation for your line in slope-intercept form by identifying your slope and your intercept. And then for part 2, please take that format and change it from slope-intercept form to standard form, making sure that a is not a negative. Okay? Take a couple minutes to do this, and then we will go over it together. All right, my line is crossing my y-axis at negative 7, and this is a negative 7 because here's my 0, and I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is negative 7 for my b. From there, I'm looking for a point to the right of that. And you know what? I don't see one. I don't see any point that falls on this crosshair, so I'm going to have to look backwards. Well, if I look backwards, I'm looking. The only point I see on this line is right here. Now, I'm not going to start with my yellow and move to my red, because my red point is on the left. So I move from left to right. So I'm going to start with my red point, find my rise. While I'm not rising, I'm going down. How much am I going down? I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I went down 8 spaces to get to this line that this is on. So my rise is negative 8. My run is over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the slope for this line is negative 8 over 5. All right. From there, I'm going to take that equation, y equals negative 8. Oops, did 2 negatives. Negative 8 over 5x plus negative 7. And I'm going to be writing this to follow standard form. So I want my x's on the left side of my line. So I'm going to do the opposite of them. The opposite of plus negative 8/5 is plus positive 8/5. X. Got to keep my x. So now I have 8/5 x plus, and I had 1y equals, well, over here this canceled and I'm just left with this negative 7. Does this follow slope-intercept form? Do we have ax? Yes. Plus by? Yes. Equals c? Yes. So my equation is just what it says right there. 8 over 5x plus 1y equals negative 7. This is my equation in standard form. Check it with what I have done. All right, for exercise 3, instead of doing it with your breakout group, I want you to try it on your own. So please write out your equation. And after you have your equation, please turn it into standard form. Okay, take a couple minutes to do this. All right, we are hitting our y-axis at -1, -2, -3, -4, so my b is a -4. And I'm looking for the next point on my graph over to the right, because I go from left to right. And I find one right here, so I'm looking for the rise over the run. Well, it's not rising, it's going down. I'm going down 1, 2, so I went down 2, or -2, and I went over 1, 2, 3. So my slope is -2/3. And I keep everything else the same. Y equals -2/3 x plus -4. From there, I'm rewriting this to follow my format. I want my AX to be first. And then I want my BYs. So I want something Y. Well, just real quick, what is that something? That's a 1Y. And I want it to then say equals C. Okay, so I'm going to move my x's over. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So the opposite of plus -2/3 x is plus +2/3 x. I move it to the other side. And I'm left with 2/3 x plus 1y equals, this cancels, -4. Well, does this follow AX plus BY equals C format? Yeah. I have 2/3 x, AX, plus 1y, BY equals -4. And that is my answer. We're going to close out this lesson and then do our exit ticket. All right, to close out the lesson today, we were able to write the equation of our line by finding our y-intercept and our slope, and replacing the y and the m in our equation to write y equals mx plus b. So that was the first part of our lesson. From there, we were able to take our equation that was written in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and use properties of equality to turn it into standard form, ax plus by equals c. We just rearranged it, and we wanted to make sure always that a was non-negative, which was a super easy fix. So that is what we've done today. If you feel confident, please move on to the exit ticket with me. If not, then I want you to please go back, rewatch some examples, some exercises until you feel like you are ready to be successful on this exit ticket. All right, your exit ticket for today looks very similar to what we've done in class. The first thing that you are going to do is write your equation in slope-intercept form for this number 1. I want you to identify what is your m and what is your b and write out that equation for the line. Okay? From part 2, what you're going to do is you're going to take your equation from part 1, and it's written in slope-intercept form, so you are just going to turn it into standard form, making sure that a is not a negative. Okay, exactly what we've done today, just a little bit more independent. So please do this on your own. This is your grade for the day, and then when you're finished with this, please go complete your lesson reflection in Google Classroom.